You're rolling with Dr. K. Dr. K. 100% disability every Wednesday. You're rolling with Dr. K. Oh, Dr. K. 100% disability every Wednesday. I not get us, but I hit that last little note. Good afternoon. How are you guys? And we are back. Today is Wednesday, August 21st. Watching via GRTV 25. Thank you for tuning in. We greatly appreciate your viewership. And just know, yes, this is about a week later, but the information is still relevant. It is not time sensitive. So we're going to really just kind of dive in today. My guest is Ms. Drumroll, please. Yes. All the way from New York, guys. We are rolling in New York. We are big time. And we have Miss Diane Dimond. Probably most of you are not old enough to know all of the people and all of the shows that she was on. But I know one that you're going to remember is that she broke the story with Michael Jackson and the sex case. That everybody remembers. I don't care how old you are. I don't even know how 3-year-olds find out, but they know. So we're just honored today. And I'm going to read just a little tidbit that I put for the promo today. It says, join us live today at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we roll to New York for part 2 of our conversation on adult guardianship, a $300 billion industry, no meaningful regulations, little supervision or auditing, rampant greed and exploitation. Welcome to the world of abusive guardianship. And that was taken straight off of your website, Miss Diane Dimond. Oh, wait a minute. We got a viewer all the way from Bel Air, Maryland. Hello, Shayna. You say hello to Shayna.
Hello, Shayna.
From Bel Air, Maryland.
And thanks for that wonderful introduction, Kimberly. That was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what was the impetus for you first starting to investigate this guardianship piece?
Well, my whole career, radio, TV, print, books, has mostly centered around crime and justice issues. And so I spent a lot of times in courtrooms and covering trials and meeting people and making contacts. And I got a lot of friends. I've lived in a lot of places. And I got a call from my best friend who had passed away, her sister. And she said, you're not going to believe what has happened to my father. It's called guardianship. And she told me this story about how her father, a very prominent doctor, had been put into this court system, declared incapacitated, and all of his assets were taken away, frozen by the court, and put into the name of a guardian that Dr. Herman didn't even know. All of his decisions were being made by a total stranger. His medical, his personal, where he was going to live, what doctors he could see, people who could come and visit him. I mean, I didn't believe it at first, to be honest with you. And then I started checking into it. And coincidentally, very shortly afterward, I work with a lot of private detectives across the country. And I heard from one in Maryland, as a matter of fact. And he said, I've got this case you should look into. It's this elderly woman. She's in a assisted living place in Pennsylvania. She wants to come and live with her children in Maryland, but she's under this thing called guardianship. And he described exactly the same setup. Incapacitated. All her money was taken, put into the control of a total stranger, guardian, who was charging like $600 an hour to be the guardian. So I was writing a syndicated column at the time, and I wrote about that Pennsylvania case because I couldn't get anything on the Dr. Herman case in New Mexico. Everything was sealed. And the minute I wrote about it, Kimberly, my mailbox blew up. People across the country were writing to me saying, please look at my case. Same things happening to my disabled brother, my mother, my sister, my cousin. We can't get out from under it. Help, help, help. So I started gathering stories, and it culminated 8 years later in this book. Be careful who you, no, it's We're Here to Help When Guardianship Goes Wrong. I almost gave you the title of my Jackson book there, sorry.
She says, wow, I still can't believe this is allowed, especially when the person has family. And Josie Jones, thank you so much for tuning in.
You know, Shanna, that's a very important thing that she just said there, because guardianships can't start until there's a petition given to a judge, a specific judge. And those petitions are mostly filed by members of the family who want the legal authority to represent their loved one. But it gets before a judge, and that family member isn't named as the guardian. Some familiar face that hangs around the courthouse. That's the person who gets appointed time after time after time. I also found that those people that get appointed often contribute campaign contributions to the judge's reelection campaigns. So tit for tat, I'm not sure, but sure doesn't smell right.
Not at all. We did bring some of that up, the cycle of it, and all those who are involved, from if your person is found incapacitated, then they go to the court-appointed doctor, and then there's the court-appointed attorney, and then there's the court-appointed guardian. And then we have this probate judge who is in charge. And so you don't ever get that opportunity to say, well, I have my own attorney, I have my own doctor, this is what my doctor is saying.
Right.
How do we break out of that cycle?
Boy, I wish I knew. I mean, I could try to make up some glorious answer for you, but I don't have an answer. I have to tell you something. As I write in the book, this thing called guardianship, at the turn of the century, when the white man in Washington, D.C. decided that the Osage Indian tribe that they had banished to this barren land in Oklahoma had gotten too big for their britches. They put them on this land and said, here you go, this is your reservation. But then they discovered oil and natural gas and minerals, and the Osage Indian tribe became, like, honestly, the richest people in the world. Wow. And the white guys didn't like the way the Indians were spending their money, sending their kids to fancy schools in Europe and buying automobiles, which were new at the time. And so Congress decided to guardianize the entire Osage Indian tribe and all of their children. So now they're incapacitated. They can't hire their own lawyer. They can't fight back. They have no capacity in the eyes of the law. So since then, since the Osage Indian tribe, if you saw the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, that's what it's all about, the system has just grown and grown, and people think, it's Britney Spears. It's just Wendy Williams. It's people with tons of money. It's not. Kimberly, I found out after all my research, there are 2 million Americans living under guardianship or conservatorship, as it's called in some states, right now. 2 million people. Not all the guardianships are bad. I hasten to say there are some really good people working in the industry to help vulnerable citizens, but 2 million people have been stripped of their civil rights and all their assets are taken. Is that how we want to help vulnerable people in this country? I don't think so. So I wrote the book.
Shana says, no way, it's a circle of criminals paying each other. And we want to say hello to Dr. Vertaji Kendricks Bailey, who was watching from Detroit, Michigan.
Oh.
And she says, good afternoon. So just so that everybody knows, here in Michigan, I live right over here. She lives right over here.
And just so you know, the state of Michigan does not have a great track record for viable, positive guardianships. I'm looking at a case right now. I have to tell you, it's so heartbreaking. People get put into guardianship and they lose everything, right? Well, now I have discovered in several cases, but the one I'm really looking at is in Michigan, where kids in the foster care system are being funneled directly into guardianship. Why?
Oh my goodness.
Because, yeah, they get community money, nonprofit money, state money, Social Security, disability, federal benefits. This one girl I'm talking with right now, 19 years old, at 18, she was told, okay, your facility where you've been living is closing down. You're going to get booted. Do you want to go into guardianship? And she said, yeah. Wow, that sounds
Oh
great.
my goodness.
Like
Right.
a guardian angel, great. Well, I've gotten my hands on some documents. This is what investigative reporters do. And there is at least, well, there's more than $250,000 in benefits attached to this young girl. No, she doesn't get the money. Her handlers get the money.
Right.
So at 18, she's out of the foster care system, but let's keep that money in the system so they funneled her into guardianship. And it happens in a lot of cases across the country, I'm discovering.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So Shayna says, once the money is gone, what happens to the people?
Shayna, you have good insight. Here's the saddest part to me. When a guardian takes over, they don't come to your house and help you out. They hire a lot of other people. They hire aides and cooks and cleaners and drivers and personal messengers, and you're paying for it all. The incapacitated ward of the court is paying for all of that. So when the liquid money runs out, like the checking account money and the savings account money, the guardian goes back to court. Say it's an elderly person, mortgage-free home. They've paid off their home. They've got this nice little nest egg. They've saved all their life. The guardian goes back to the judge and says, Your Honor, all the liquid money's gone. I got to sell their house and everything in it, and the cars and the coin collections and the art collections and whatever, anything of value, because I need a pool of money to make sure I can take care of Mr. or Mrs. Old Person for the rest of their life. And you know what the judges say?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Now, wait a minute. This older woman, say it's an older woman, she has a will that says her house is going to go to her adult daughter when she dies. And her will says that the coin collections are supposed to be sold to pay for her grandson's tuition in college. And you see what I'm saying? All of this inheritance is now going to total strangers. It's like this great redistribution of wealth. So back to Shanna's question, what happens to the ward of the court? The guardian puts them in a facility, puts them in a group home, puts them in assisted living, puts them in a nursing home, and then lets the staff take care of them. I've got your pool of money here. I'll pay the house or the facility to take care of you. And that's where many of them just die. They're over-medicated many times. If their children, adult children, complain about the situation, the guardian, they're so powerful. They have the court authority to ban people from coming to visit the ward in the nursing home. So they die frequently all alone. It's just the saddest thing.
So she says the judge allowed them to keep on taking as long as they get a piece of the pie.
Well, there's a lot of people that get a piece of these pies. I have to tell you, there's the lawyer that makes the petition. And sometimes these petitions, I got to tell you, they're full of lies. The daughter stole $100,000 from her mother, or the son is a drug addict. They can't be the guardian. Let's appoint a professional. So the people who take the money are the petitioning lawyer, the guardian, all of the people that the guardian hires. There's a court visitor that comes and checks to make sure a guardianship is really needed. There's a mental health evaluator. Sometimes there's a panel of mental health evaluators, like 3 people. All of these people get paid from the ward's money. Sort of sounds like organized crime, doesn't it?
It sounds like it to me.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's so sad. It's just, my book is not this dry, explanation of the system, although I do explain the system to you and all the players in it. But the book really, Kimberly, I'm proud to say it's the stories of the human toll that this system can take. Now, again, some guardianships work out fine, especially if the family is appointed as the guardian. But tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands over the years have not turned out fine. So you can read all about the different kinds of people that are guardianized, and some are perfectly fine. They're not incapacitated, but they get roped into the system.
Right. So she says, this has to, oh my goodness, a lot here. This has to be stopped, especially if they have family that's willing to help. And that's a lot of payouts. Wow. Has any family members ever won a case?
There have been some families who have successfully gotten the guardianship terminated, but it's pretty rare. I mean, Britney Spears got out of hers because she had a lot of money. By the way, her guardian was making $10,000 a week for 14 years, almost 14 years. She was paying 13 different lawyers at one point to represent, her mom, her dad, the guardian. It was crazy. But I've never heard of a family bringing a civil suit to get any sort of victory. Those never work. There have been class action suits. There have been RICO suits, racketeering and corruption type suits. And I haven't heard of one civil suit that's been successful. There's one pending here in New York that might be. I mean, I can tell you all about that if you're interested, but no, it's really, really hard to get out of guardianship.
So that guardian made $520,000 a year at $10,000 a week. We want to say
almost 14 years.
Oh my goodness. We want to say thank you so much to Jason Sidney Lee for tuning in. We appreciate you, Jason. The time is now 17 minutes after the hour, and we want to say thank you so much for tuning into Rolling on the Road with the Doc. Yes, you are rolling with Dr. Kimberly on today. And my guest is Miss Diane Dimond, world-renowned investigative journalist. I mean, who spent 8 years researching, writing stories in the meantime about guardianship. So this is not something that, looked good to her today. But the book, if you kind of go through, you can get excerpts if you kind of go to her webpage, which is just DianeDimond.com. And the Diamond is spelled without an A, if you will.
Yes.
But if you are watching via GRTV 25, I want to say thank you. This information is not dated. And we are talking about guardianships. And today is August 21, 2024. Can you believe it? It is just unbelievable. We are in the 8th month of the year. And my beautiful guest is a white woman, and she has about shoulder length hair. And she has on this beautiful robin eggs blue jacket with a white blouse underneath. And then she has this beautiful necklace that kind of captures blue and adds some pop of color in there. And she has the most wonderful smile. Yeah,
thank you.
It just lights up a room. And you know me, I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly, and these are not Afro puffs. See, I have no hair. Someone saw the video and said, "Oh my gosh, those are symmetrical Afro puffs you have." And then I said, "No, that's my headrest to my wheelchair." And I do have on, yes, my purple lashes with the purple glitter. And I have on purple, you guys know, lip gloss to match. And my dress is purple and white. And I chose white pearls to accent my dress today. Yeah, she's a little fancy. She's got on some church pearls. Yes, and the pearl ring.
And beautiful fingernails as well.
Oh, yeah.
You have a great manicure.
Well, actually, they're press on, and
Don't tell me.
my middle ones. Well, I like people to know that the look that I have is obtainable and achievable. And I do have on the blue monarch butterflies, which represents the gift of life. So the month of August is Minority Donation Month. So if you haven't thought about it, check your heart, put it on your license to become an organ and tissue donor. I am a family donor. I donated my husband, and he will have helped over 125 people with his donation. So think about it, consider it. And well, we got to said yes, we would love to hear about that story. The story that you were going to tell us right before I went to the break.
Oh, well, there's so many stories I could tell you, but I know from your experience and living with disabilities, the disabled community should know that they are really a target for an unwanted guardianship. And guardianships can happen without the targeted person even knowing that it's going on, that there's a court proceeding happening.
Really?
Anyone can file a petition. It could be, God forbid, Kimberly, your next door neighbor is mad because you make too much noise, or it could be a real estate agent who wants your apartment, or it could be you go to the hospital and you're all by yourself. There are trolls within emergency rooms at hospitals, in geriatric offices, in psychiatric offices that gather private information about patients and sell it to lawyers who write up petitions, or sell it to guardians who then go to their favorite lawyer and say, hey, there's a disabled person over here who's getting this benefit and that benefit and Medicare and Social Security, and they live all by themselves. We should guardianize them. And boom, the first thing you would know about it is that someone's knocking on your door with a piece of paper from the court. Now, I know that sounds like science fiction, but it is not. And it happens without the targeted person even knowing they're being put into guardianship. And then your entire life is changed. And what can you do? In most states, you cannot hire your own attorney to fight for you. The court's going to give you a court-appointed lawyer. But I explained this in the book, there's a big argument. Well, who does this lawyer work for? Does he work for you, the disabled person, or does he work for the court to make sure the guardianship goes through? So it really, I'll tell you a quick story.
Hold on, give me 1 second. We have Dr. Vertaji says this is great information that we really need to continue to educate the community. Whitney Penn is watching. Roz loves purple. That's Rosalind Harris is watching. And Artie Franklin is watching. So thank you so much for your comments and for tuning in. Now,
yeah, and hi to Roz. I met Roz recently in Washington, D.C. She's a peach. The quick story, a disabled young man lives in Staten Island, New York. His name is Michael Ligori. I tell his story in the book. At birth, there was an accident, and the high of oxygen, he developed a mild case of cerebral palsy. His parents sued the hospital, won about $2 million. So under New York law, this infant boy, Michael, gets a guardian to make sure his parents don't squander the money. It's the Shirley Temple law.
Mm-hmm.
Because spent all her money as a young kid. Anyway, so when Michael grows up, goes to school, he's a exemplary high school student. Cerebral palsy, as your audience surely knows, affects your motor skills, not your intellect. He's great in high school, and he's looking forward to going to college. He's supposed to get his money. Well, the guardian goes back to the judge right before Michael's 18th birthday and says, I don't know exactly what, because all of these proceedings are held in secret. That's why the public doesn't know about this. But the judge is convinced that, well, look at this kid. You know, he walks differently. He talks a little differently. Your Honor, you can't let this guardianship lapse. And so the judge agreed to keep it going for 6 more years. I talk to Michael Ligori all the time. he called me right before Christmas last year, and he was just bubbling. It's over. It's over. I'm out of guardianship. Finally, finally. I said, how? Why? Well, he said, first of all, the judge is retiring. And second, they said if I paid $50,000 more in fees to the guardian and the court visitor and the mental evaluator, I could get out of it. And I said, Michael, so you paid? He said, yeah. I said, how much money do you have left? He said, I don't know. Nobody knows because the guardian who was supposed to be filing these annual reports with the court didn't do it, hadn't bothered to do it for years and years. So nobody really knows. They probably do now, but at the time, Michael has no idea how much money. And by that time, sadly, he had decided, well, my chance to go to college is over. Forget it. So, come on. It comes right down, Kimberly, to the judges in these cases. They look at these petitions. Again, they're full of many of them, some of them exaggerations and lies, and they just take it as gospel. In this kind of court, it's called an equity court, there's no jury trials. There's no due process is guaranteed. It's not like a criminal or a civil court. It's whatever the judge wants to do. And so the judge just wants to get these cases oftentimes through the docket. Guardianship? Yeah, you got it. And there's a guardianship in place. So it really, in my estimation, it does come down to better training and understanding of the judges of what they're really doing to people.
Ross says, hi, ladies. Hi, Diane.
Hello.
So if you're running for office, is this something that can be, is it a community petition, or do we need someone in office to write a new law? Mm-hmm. What do we need to do?
Well, I'll tell you, every state has their own system. Mm-hmm. And so the federal government, Congress, the U.S. Congress in Washington keeps having hearings about how awful guardianship is. The Senate Select Committee on Aging, I can't tell you how many times they've had hearings back to 1987, and nothing gets done. So some states have passed some minor laws. You have to let the family visit. You can't isolate the person. You must consider less restrictive programs for the person, not just guardianship. But the predators within the system know how to get around all these new laws and how to not file the audits that they should every year, and how not to let the families see their loved one. It's just shameful what some of the people are doing in this system. My estimation, Kimberly, to answer your question, I think the federal government needs to step in. They keep saying, well, it's a states' rights issue. It's a states' issue. Well, come on. I'm not buying that. The Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. goes into state police departments that commit civil rights violations, police brutality, whatever it is. They go in, the feds go in and tell the states what they have to do to get right with the law. Well, how come they don't do that with guardianship? They could, but they just don't. So to me, this is a civil rights issue. It's the most under-discussed civil rights issue of our time, maybe. 2 million people stripped of their civil rights in this country? Come on. Where's the ACLU? Where are civil rights lawyers? Well, let me be honest. The lawmakers in these states are besieged by lobbyists who keep telling them that the system's working just fine. Thank you very much. These are lobbyists from the legal community, from guardianship associations, from hospitals, from financial institutions. Do you know how talk show host Wendy Williams got put into guardianship? Her financial advisor at Wells Fargo in New York decided that she and her son weren't spending Wendy's money prudently. Wendy Williams has tens of millions, maybe $100 million, according to her family. And this financial advisor decided she was spending too much money on her only child's 21st birthday party. And bingo, The bank went to court and put her in guardianship. Well, guess who is stewarding all the money besides the guardian? The bank. So everybody's making money off people in guardianship, and it's shameful. And I believe it's going to take some federal laws with teeth in them and some very strict prosecutions of people who are predators in the system.
The time is now 4:30, and we want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and from your comments, your hearts, your likes, that you guys are just, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you, and we are just glad to be able to offer the information. Is there a way that folks can contact you?
Sure, through my website. It's easy, Diane at DianeDimond.com. And again, there's no A in Diamond. Yeah, just reach me through there if you'd like. I have a lot of information on the website. If you look at the very top, there's the navigation bar, and there's something called Guardianship Central. And I tried to make that like, I don't know, one-stop shopping research place for people. I explained there's a glossary of terms that are used in guardianship. It gets really confusing, I have to tell you. There's a list of the players you'll
Is that correct?
What's that?
Is that correct?
Yeah, DianeDimond.com. Thank you. Thank you. And there are lots of articles that I've written and lots of articles that other people have written about guardianship. So that if you're faced with this, you, A, are not blindsided, and B, you might learn how to fight it if you can. I'll tell you, if a loved one of yours is suddenly guardianized, or they call it, again, conservatorship in some state, if they're conserved or guardianized, you got to act right away. You need to find somebody somehow to appeal the judge's decision. And sometimes, get this, Kimberly, some states give you 10 days. You have 10 days to appeal. Otherwise, sorry, it goes through. So I hope that the website can give you some good information. If not, write to me. Ask me questions. I'm glad to answer.
Okay, I think we can just click share. You guys, you can't see that, can you?
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So let's see. Let's make this
right at the top
bigger, so you can see that. Then I'm gonna come out
the Guardianship Central tab there,
and we'll go here.
Yeah, there you go. And then there's it all started on the right-hand side with a long-form series I did in a newspaper about the Dr. Herman case. It centers on the Dr. Herman case that I told you about earlier. And so it's a 6-part series. And then there's lots of other information there for people. I hope they, frequently ask questions, things like that. So I hope that that's helpful for people. I'll tell you a couple other quick stories while you're scrolling there. Who can become a guardian? Well, sometimes they're lawyers, but they can be anybody. In some states, you just got to be able to read and write English and be 18 years old. Some states, there's only 3 states that actually make a guardian be licensed to operate. That's California, Alaska, Nevada. Some states want you to have a certification, but you can get certified just by taking a course online and paying some money, and then they send you a certificate. Hey, you're a guardian. So anybody can become a guardian. There's a couple of stories in the book. Actually, there are several. There was a car mechanic in Rockwall, Texas, and he was owed quite a bit of money by an elderly doctor. He had fancy cars, and the bill ran up to like $40,000. The mechanic went to a local lawyer friend and he said, hey, what can I do to get this doctor to pay my bill? And the lawyer said, let's write a petition for guardianship. And this car mechanic became the guardian of a multi-million-dollar estate of this retired doctor who was having some memory issues and forgot to pay the bill. A car mechanic Wow. There's another case cited in a federal GAO report I found that a taxi cab driver came across this elderly man, became his guardian, became the 83-year-old the guardian to this 83-year-old man. What did he do with the old man? He put him in his basement, put him in a dirty diaper and a torn T-shirt, fed him a little bit, but he just spent all of his money. He bought a Hummer for himself. He wrote a lot of checks to the exotic dancers at the strip club down the block. And things finally caught up with him, and he went to prison. But, there are just not enough prosecutions of the real hefty predators in this industry.
We want to say thank you to Monique Reddick for tuning in. Thank you, guys. And we appreciate all the hearts and all the likes that are going up. Thank you. We appreciate you. And here is the website if you want the resources for guardianship. And it does have explanation of terms. And what we plan on doing here in Michigan is just kind of being a whistleblower and bringing to the attention all those who don't need, guardians that you're taking over. You've taken their families. Wow.
You hear the term guardianship and it sounds so altruistic, right? Like a guardian angel. But there are people who are in this system needlessly. If we were really serious about this guardianship thing, helping the most vulnerable, we wouldn't have so many people sleeping on the streets in New York and Dallas and Texas and Los Angeles and Chicago and Michigan and Detroit. Those are the really vulnerable people in our system. One needless guardianship came out of Alabama. There was a woman named Joanne Bashinsky, elderly woman. They called her the potato chip queen because her husband had a big company that he sold to the Utz potato chip concern, $141 million. So she was really wealthy. She had only one relative in her life, and it was a nephew who she adored. She gave lots of money to charity, student groups, but she also gave money to her nephew, a lot of money, millions, because she had it and she loved him. And she said, take the inheritance now while I wait for God to take me. Well, two people who had long worked for her husband's company and worked for her, a bookkeeper and a lawyer, didn't like the fact that she was giving away so much money to the nephew. So they clandestinely went to court, said they were very concerned about her mental state, and they got her guardianized. And the judge never spoke to Joanne Bashinsky, had no idea if she was capacitated or not, but she was guardianized on the spot. She did not give up.
$100 million? $141 million.
Yep, that was her estate. But she didn't give up because she wasn't incapacitated. She was sharp as a tack. And she took it all the way to the Alabama Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court wrote this ruling just blasting the guardianship judge for egregiously breaking her civil rights and her constitutional protections, and her guardianship was terminated. Sadly, she died 6 months later. So, this system is stealing life from people. It's stealing the last weeks and months sometimes from people's lives. Can you imagine that widow? Yeah, she had a lot of money, so maybe we shouldn't feel sorry for her. Well, I do.
I do.
Yeah, her last months on life were being bullied, frankly, by appointees from the court. Suddenly she couldn't live her own life. So there are lots of stories like that in the book. I could keep talking for hours and hours, Kimberly, but that's not good TV or podcast radio, is it?
We want to say thank you to Stacey Willis for tuning in. And thank you, Roz, for saying to Bertaji that, yes, we are starting the education process by doing these podcasts, and we will continue to do them and shine a light on people's stories so that the public knows. And if they are in this type of situation, so if you are in a guardianship, if I hear you correctly, and you want it to be overturned, you have to take it to the Supreme Court.
Well, you have to get this. You have to go back to the judge that started the guardianship in the first place. And you got to get him or her to listen to you.
Mhm.
I heard complaints over the last 8 years of investigating these cases. The judge won't listen to me. The judge says I have to hire a lawyer to speak for me. I don't have any money left. I've been fighting this. I spend all my retirement money. I can't hire a lawyer. So first you have to go back to the guardianship lawyer, the guardianship judge rather. And then if you don't get satisfaction there, you need a lawyer to take you to the appellate court or the district court and then ultimately to the Supreme Court. However, Kimberly, good luck trying to find a lawyer who's going to take on other lawyers. You see, they don't there I have cases, if you ask about somebody running for office wanting to use this as part of their platform, let's fight abusive guardianship, legislators, lawmakers, lawyers who have said this isn't right, I'm going to help you fight it, have been defeated in their reelection bids. Lawyers have been disbarred because the guardianship lawyers bring ethical complaints against them. Several of those complaints nationwide. And I'm talking, this happens in every state in the union that I investigated. Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, New York, Texas, Arizona, Michigan. Michigan has a lot of problems, I will tell you. And I know your AG there, Dana Nessel, says she's all over it. Well, I would take exception to that. But it's bad in North Carolina. It's bad in Maine. It's bad in Florida. You know, wherever elderly people with a little money go to retire, boy, they got very vibrant guardianship systems in those states.
Now you make me nervous.
I know. So protect yourself. And part of the book, I'll tell you,
make me really nervous. So
part of the book has some how-tos to protect yourself too.
Yes. So let's start talking about different ways that we can protect ourselves.
Okay. First of all, a judge, as I've explained, can ignore your will and your estate plan and your power of attorney and all of that, but make them anyway. You got to get yourself a will. You got to designate someone to be your power of attorney and your healthcare proxy. God forbid you go to the hospital and you have no family, you have no spouse. You need someone to be your healthcare proxy. You need an estate plan. You need to use your phone and make a video of yourself, put the date at the top, and speak what you want to happen in your life. This is documentation that can be used in court. You can also, in fact, my husband and I have done this pretty recently. We went to an estate planning lawyer, about $300, just to talk. But we got some very good language to insert into our will so that if anyone tries to guardianize me or my husband, and this book has made me quite a target for that, there's now language in my will and my healthcare proxy that you, Mr. or Mrs. Judge, cannot appoint anyone unless they are one of my beneficiaries, my daughter or one of my 3 grandchildren. You can't do any. Now, a judge can ignore that, but they do so at their peril because there's a specific instruction in our will that a judge may not appoint anyone guardian over us except my daughter or one of my 3 grown grandchildren. So
now I did get a phone call about a month ago, and it was concerning a husband and a wife.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband had a stroke and was incapacitated and could not speak for himself. And the wife, 3 days after he had the stroke, and he was in ICU and they weren't quite sure if he was going to make it, the wife immediately went to get guardianship over the husband. Mm-hmm. Is it necessary for a wife to get guardianship or a husband to have guardianship over a wife?
That's such a good question. And in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, everybody, I say 3 or 4 times in the book, I'm not a lawyer. I would never step into the guardianship or conservatorship arena. No way. Because once you do, the court now knows you're a target. There's something wrong with your husband. Oh, and you're old. You can't do it. You're all by yourself. No. So they appoint an outside guardian. No, her protection should come from her last will and testament, her power of attorney. Her husband should make her the power of attorney, make her the healthcare proxy, make her the beneficiary of the estate, make a trust, put everything into a trust. Now, there are lots of things that a good estate lawyer can recommend, but for my money, I would never open the guardianship door, because then you just say, hi, here I am. I'm a target. There's a problem in my household. And, you're inviting in predators if there are predators in your area or in that particular court.
Now, you just brought up a really good point right there. To be preemptive, instead of having a will, have the will stating what you want done, but put all of your money into a trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that will protect it from guardianship?
It'll protect it from the state in which you live.
Got it.
And again, I'm not a lawyer, and it was complicated when we did it recently, but we have one daughter who is grown and has my 3 grandchildren who are also grown. So our daughter is the trustee of our trust. So our house is in the trust. Our retirement funds are protected otherwise, but we also mentioned them in the trust. Other things are in the trust, and they can't be touched. The state can't touch them. They can tax you when you sell the house or whatever, but if you immediately buy another house with the proceeds, that house goes into the trust, as I am remembering off the top of my head. So trusts are very valuable.
And if you are a veteran and you are at 100% totally and permanently disabled, then you don't have to worry about the taxes. You just need to make sure that you have everything in the trust for whoever you want. But things are changing, especially in the state of Michigan, where you can be the surviving spouse and it'll pass on to you now, whereas before it didn't. And you would have to be responsible for taxes. They would start back up. But now that does not happen anymore.
I'll tell you, it's one of the things that amazes me is that these guardians, and I'm just talking about the predatory ones. Again, there are good guardians working in the system, but the predatory guardians will have dozens, hundreds of wards all at the same time. Now, tell me, how in the world are they supposed to service hundreds of different wards? And so even a Navy veteran on a pension, as somebody who has a regular paycheck coming in, I don't mean to scare you, but you're a target. There's a case I had in Florida, a man named Stephen Stryker. He also was a Navy veteran. He had a swallowing problem, and it would land him in the hospital every so often. And he was assigned a guardian named Rebecca Farrelly. Look that name up if you're interested. Rebecca Farrelly, Fierle. She had up to 400 wards in various different counties all over the state of Florida. She also was doing some ward stuff on the side with a local hospital. So her MO was to put a do not resuscitate on all of her wards, because her name's on all their assets. Who gives a damn what happens to them now, I guess she thought, because I got my name on all their assets. So if, Stephen Stryker is going to choke and die, do not resuscitate. Stephen Stryker's family knew that his military pension was going to this woman and all of his other benefits were in her name. And they begged her, don't lift that DNR. We do not want that DNR. In addition, Rebecca Farrelly also put an order. This is how powerful guardians can be. Put an order on his chart, cap his feeding tube. That was the only thing keeping Stephen Stryker alive when he had this esophageal problem. So what happened? She didn't lift the DNR. She didn't lift the cap the feeding tube. And the staff at the hospital stood by and watched this man die slowly over the course of a week. Now, what happened to Rebecca Fairley? They found out all sorts of felonious things, in my opinion, felonious things that she did. And then the pandemic hit, and there was no court, and then there were plea bargain agreements and this and that. So what happened to Rebecca Fairley? She got probation. They had all these charges, felony charges against her. She pled down to a case of negligence of an elder, and she got probation. No jail time. And now I understand she is re-registered in the state of Florida, and she's a life coach. You can't make this stuff up, Kimberly. It's just...
I just saw it I just Googled it. Y'all know us. We will Google everything, Googleize it.
Oh, me too. Or I asked Siri, find me that story. Yeah. The book is full of stories that will make your jaw drop. And you might think I'm making it up, but my book has pages and pages and pages of endnotes, footnotes, where you can double check what I wrote.
If it hadn't happened to me in the manner in which it happened in my family, I would have said, you guys, she's making this all up. And I, joke. I just had this show just, for humor.
It's, these things are not supposed to happen in the United States of America. We have the best legal system in the world. And I believe in the legal system, but I also believe in fair play and fairness and compassion and punishing people who don't live by the laws. And that's not what I found in this system. The people listening to this program, again, might say, I think she's off her rocker. But let me tell you something. You never heard about this because all of these proceedings are held in secret. The case files are stamped confidential. The people involved, the families, are often put under gag orders that can't go out and tell an outsider what's going on in the courtroom. There's a poor gal in Santa Fe, New Mexico, who came out of the courtroom with her common law husband being guardianized, told her best friend. Her best friend put the story on Facebook, and the court went nuts. Fined the woman who spoke against the gag order $25,000. So, you haven't heard about all this stuff because it is conducted in secret. They say, there are HIPAA privacy laws, medical privacy. So, this has to do with people's mental health and their welfare and maybe their disabilities. So everything is conducted in secret. Well, isn't that a convenient cloak for all the predators working within the system? Yes.
She said, no one is safe.
No one is safe. And I'll give you one more figure to take with you. Statistics can make your eyes glaze over, but state courts in this country confiscate from wards a collective $50 billion in assets. $50 billion.
I read that when I was...
And because the average guardianship lasts 6 years, that's a pot of money of $300 billion. And it's just sitting there attracting people who don't have to be licensed and probably don't have to have a certificate. They just have to be 18 and be able to read and write. And I'm a guardian. So something gotta give on this. And the only way to do it is through programs like yours, Dr. Kimberly. Spread the word. This is happening all across the country, and it should stop.
Hi, Kai. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you for tuning in. She just sent me a text saying, hey, I think I missed the live. I said, we're still on. So she came immediately on, and she's watching via YouTube. So we're live on YouTube as well. This has been extremely eye-opening I do appreciate the things that the VA does have in place. They make sure that you have
Good.
a living will and that your medical wishes, your medical directives are always up to date. They will ask you, every single month, do you still feel the same? Who do you want to be in charge? Is there another person? And so
Good.
I see a little tail back there wiggling.
Oh my gosh, can you see my cat? I'm sorry. This is the time of day she always wants to eat, so she's bothering
Oh,
me.
that was scary. I just said, wait a minute, there's the black thing moving.
Miss
Oh,
Libby.
well, hello, Libby.
Yes, she'll probably jump up here any second. She's hungry.
She says, a much needed show. Please get your house in order. Do it today. Please don't wait.
And you can find these will forms online that I think you can download for a few bucks rather than going to a lawyer. And if you're financially strapped, at least do that. Be sure to get it notarized. You have to go to your Staples or your post office or somebody who can notarize your signature and get a witness. But put on paper what you want, who you want to be there for you when you can't be there for you.
You actually can go to your local bank. Here in Michigan, you can go to your bank and for free to get documents notarized that you have. They also offer veterans free block boxes.
Oh,
So if you want to keep all of that in safety deposit box is what they're called. So if you want to keep all those documents in a safety deposit box, you can do that and then let someone know where they are. And I think we appreciate your time first and foremost. We
well,
just appreciate you.
I appreciate your interest in this topic because, it's complicated and it's not easy to hear. And who wants to think about your death or your hospitalization where you can't speak and you can't, you're desperate for help, or you have cancer or some horrible thing befalls you? It's not easy to think about those things. But as I get older, and you talked about my long career, as I get older, and I'm already older, I started to think about those things myself in researching this book. And it's odd, Dr. Kimberly, I went through 8 years of investigating for this book, took about a year to get it to publication, Brandeis University Press, God bless them. But it wasn't until the book was out, I looked at my husband. We got to get a will. We got to get an estate, but we got to get a trust. We got to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's my foremost message today. Understand that there's a system out there that can be a knock on the door and all of a sudden you're in it. And then it's too late. So do think about ways you can protect yourself on to be your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, things like that.
How can people get your book?
Well, it's you can get it on Amazon, but I'll tell you, and if you do, please leave a nice review, because you have to buy the book through Amazon if you review it there. But you can get it through like thriftbooks.com or something for less money. So search around. I also, by the way, did the audio book. My husband was a radio anchorman on CBS for years and years. So we have a studio in the house. He does voiceover work, and I did the audiobook version. If you think, I don't really want a hardback book in my house, I got too many of them, you can get the audiobook version. And that's on Amazon too.
Well, what if we want it signed by you?
Ooh. Well, I do, public appearances. I just did one in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be at the Edison, New Jersey Public Library, where apparently they videotape your presentations and then show it around. And I'm going to be selling some books there. But invite me to your stand for a book signing, wherever you are.
Okay, we'll we'll do it, talk like it's via email, and let's make that happen. And let's
All right.
do let's do a whole big
You know,
day seminar luncheon, and we're going to talk about guardianship and what you need to do and educate some folks. See about getting you here to Michigan.
that sounds like a good idea. I was just in Tulsa, Oklahoma, not long ago, talking to the National Association of Licensed Private Investigators. Because you
Ooh,
see, when this happens to people, say your elderly mother is, and what do? You have no idea. That's why I set up the website so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect. But you're in a brain fog. What do I do? What information do I need to gather? Who is that guardian? Does this judge do this to everybody? Who's the mental evaluator? He spent and said she's incapacitated. Well, that's where private investigators come in, and they can gather this kind of information. Is the guardian giving a lot of money to the judge's reelection campaign? Is the medical examiner the only one they ever use? How much is that person charging? You know, private investigators are invaluable, and they're a lot cheaper than lawyers. I'll tell you what, they can help you understand your route to appeal and how to do it pro bono, yourself without a lawyer. I don't recommend that. I recommend you really try to find a lawyer. But as I said, it's tough to find a lawyer that takes on a whole system of the justice department. They just don't like to fight judges and other lawyers. It's tough.
so that means we need to be preemptive and
Yes.
not reactive.
Right, right. I was very gratified. These private investigators, they're a cream of the crop group. NALI is the name of it, National Association of Licensed Investigators. They're very analytical thinkers, and boy, they got it right away. I sold every book I had that I brought. I didn't bring enough books to that conference, but I go to various conferences and I put it up on my website. So check back there often to see where I might be.
Sounds good. Hopefully you'll be, if it's not before we can get you here, see how close you are to us, and we'll all come in and visit.
And that would be great.
I'd appreciate that.
Well,
So
thanks for having me. I really do appreciate your interest in the topic. Like I say, I think it's a very important civil rights topic.
I think you mentioned two very important groups that are near and dear to my heart, and that is the disabled and the veteran community. And so between the two, I think that there is a need for you to come in and have this conversation, and let's see what we can do, to safeguard ourselves, and especially in the Black and Brown communities.
Yep.
Education is what we need.
If
So
you get the book, please look up the case of Dr. Lily White, an educator from Maryland who $5 million estate. She and her husband scrimped and saved and invested in fabulous, and it was all taken away from her. I won't say any more, but it was a heartbreaking story. And African-American woman who worked her whole life to make an inheritance for her family, and it was all taken away from her. She died alone in a nursing home of COVID. So,
whew,
yeah. I don't mean to make you all teary-eyed, but
just excuse
it's
me.
got to stop. It's just got to stop somewhere. So,
Just,
hey, now wait, you've got those great eyelashes on. Watch it. Be careful.
oh, they know me on the show. We're very transparent here, and I roll in my truth. I cry when I'm sad, I eat when I'm hungry, and I sleep when I'm tired.
I like it. I like it.
I do. And I want to say thank you so much. So much. And
My pleasure.
you have been watching Rolling with Dr. Kimberly, and this is an educational program of 100 Shades of Diversability, where we improve the quality of life for persons with diverse abilities and their families legislatively, economically, through community partnerships and education. And today, this definitely touches your finances. We have created another community partner, and we have all been educated on today. and we're not going to stop. We have been asked since we did the show last week to continue this conversation, and we will with Miss Harris and with Miss Diamond. We'll get together with the two ladies and see about putting on a conference, because I have received numerous calls and inquiries about how can I get some help with this situation. So we're going to work diligently to get her here, and let's keep moving forward and having the conversation. But until then, I will continue to have her information up, and you can always go back to YouTube for the replay, or watch it when it comes on next week on television on Monday, Tuesday, and on Thursday, 3 days a week that the show is shown. So we want to say thank you so much for rolling with the doc, and we'll see you on next Tuesday.